is the Kev Baker Show.
And I am your host, Kev Baker. Welcome back. I'm joined tonight by my good friend and co-host, Johnny Whistles, and the one and only Ben Emlyn-Jones. And you can find Ben's work over at HPAN for November, WOblogspot.co.uk. And you can find his YouTube over at Ben JR Reporter, is it?
Ben the JR
Reporter,
yeah.
The, come on, you know.
But, there were links on the main.
It was good fun in the first half. And this next topic that we're going into, David Icke has faced years of derision for bringing this up. But this isn't new information. And the topic of reptilians dates back across the ages. Now, myself and Popeye, if you ever listen to Freaky Friday, we'll have a laugh about something called the Chittahoorie. Now, the Chittahoorie, if you're into your Marvel comics, they're the race of shape-shifting aliens, right, who've tried to come here, conquer Earth during the Second World War and in the early 21st century. Totally fictional. However, you can take it to the real world, where, again, David Icke was speaking to Credo Mutwa. Now, he's like the spiritual leader of the Zulu tribe over in Africa. And their kind of, their cosmology, their evolution, well, it involves a visiting race of shape-shifting alien reptiles called the Chittahoorie. And this is the real world, not in a Marvel comic, real world stuff. And Ben, he's been covering some of the reptilian topic as well. And I would love to have this conversation with me, Johnny, and Ben, and just get all of you out there to consider the bigger picture that may well be at play. So, Ben, what got you back into the reptilians?
Well, I came across a chap called Chris Turner, who's actually a filmmaker, and he's the director of a new documentary coming out very soon called Don't Mention the Reptilians, which is the name, which is a good title, I think. And he has been investigating a very, very strange but a surprisingly common phenomenon, and that is people reporting that they've had encounters with creatures that appear to be humanoid. They're humanoid-type creatures, but they appear to be rather lizard-like. They're not human. They have reptilian features, scaly green skin, lizard-like eyes and faces and facial features. And, of course, as you said, this is not a new idea, and David Icke wasn't the first. David Icke wasn't the first to come out with it. He was the first to publicize it, but others have spoken about reptilian humanoids.
I'm not going to be I'm not standing here being David Icke's champion, but I have to feel sorry for the guy sometimes because he's a researcher. He researches other people's work that's out there, presents it with his spin. And the reptilians wasn't his invention. But yet, as soon as you say reptiles, if you play a word association game, reptilians, it goes with David Icke.
Exactly. That's it. He's the one who seems to have taken the rap for it. But, I mean, there are others, such as Brian Desborough and other researchers who've spoken about reptilians. And, of course, they go back into ancient mythology. There are very, very old stories, such as Credo Mutwa, the African historian of the Zulu nation, who has actually categorized this within his own culture. And this can be found all over Africa and indeed in many other parts of the world which have had no communication with Africa at all. There are images of these reptilian humanoids which are very, very old, including a statue in a college in Oxford, which I've seen myself, and which no one really knows where it came from. It's 500 years old, this statue. But it actually appears to show one of these humanoid reptilian creatures with in a sinister way, a man sitting in its belly, which is very, very sinister.
Well, can we throw in maybe one from the Bible? Wasn't there a talking snake in the Garden of Eden?
Well, actually, yes, of course, Satan, the talking, yeah, that is an intelligent reptilian at any rate. Yeah, but there were now one of the features of these creatures is that this is the scariest part. They appear according to some reports, they appear to be able to disguise themselves as humans. In other words, there are people who have had encounters with what they think are just other people, and they have changed shape. They have actually appeared in a different form. They've literally shapeshifted from their normal human form into the form of this reptilian humanoid being. And this has happened. In one case, there was a woman who was married to a man who was one of these creatures. And she wrote a book about it. It's really, really quite sinister. I mean, I met her and this lady and spoke to her, and I was actually surprised. She was completely mentally normal. She talked normally. She didn't come across as crazy, but she spoke about this remarkable experience she'd had.
And we had
in all seriousness,
we had Bill Bean on the show. Similar story, almost more interdimensional, because somebody was troubled, and Bill was carrying out a deliverance ceremony on them. And when he did cast out the entity, Ben, he said he could swear he seen the most massive black snake leaving this man's body before it was whisked away. And this snake thing, we can even go to the ancient cultures. Let's take up South America. Look at the side of the Aztec and the Mayan pyramids, where on the equinox, what does it cast the shadow of? A big serpent.
Yep. And I mean, there are images in the Mayan, if you go to the Mayan and Inca, the various reliefs and stone sculptures they did, which show these very same creatures. And you see them in various other places around the world. In China, I believe there are some as well. And all these cultures have their legends of these various creatures. And of course, one of the things that comes up is that the humanoid, again, the shape-shifting between human and reptilian form is another common feature. These are actually people who can appear kind of in a human form, but then their real form is reptilian. And there's an idea that there is a bloodline. There is almost like there are kind of separate species almost living parallel to our own, and which tends to be people in positions of power. For example, kings, queens, emperors, presidents, prime ministers. Well, and what's worrying is, of course, that believe it or not, the modern leaders of our world have a family tree which actually does connect to these ancient bloodlines.
And interestingly enough, that same bloodline that you're talking about, where I think 40 of the 40-odd presidents are all related to each other, guess who else ties in? The one and only Donald Trump.
Oh.
Go figure. But Ben, what you're talking about there, if I had to go out on a limb and present some kind of hypothesis, I would go along the Sitchin kind of line, and I would say maybe the Anunnaki came down here, and perhaps they had some reptilian in them. Who only knows? And then they left maybe, say, 12, 13 families who would go on to do their bidding right up until today. But I'm a conspiracy theorist, right?
Yeah, well, the thing about it is, I mean, if this is a fact, if this material is there, this evidence is there, it has to be dealt with. And the implications are quite shocking, because one of the most famous of these members of these bloodlines is none other than Queen Elizabeth II. Yes, the Queen herself is said to be a part of this bloodline, in which case, is she one of these creatures, one of these people who appear as humans?
You see, I think it's a genetic code. Yeah. I know people will say, well, we've seen them shifting on TV, and some of the things I've seen, I have to keep an open mind. However, I think they use this whole shifting into the thing as a convenient cover and a distraction from the fact that there is a blood code there. Now, these entities that the royals and everyone else do the bidding of, they absolutely thrive and feed on fear. They are low energy, and that explains why they try and keep us in this low energy, Ben. Possibly.
It does indeed, yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of strange things that they do. And I mean, Princess Diana actually said she used to say some things to her friend Vera Diamond about this. And she didn't tell her everything, but she said she was holding some material back, some information back about her relationship with the royal family. The things she said on Panorama, the things that went into that famous book that probably got her killed, there were things she held back from there. And there's talk about, I mean, for example, do you remember there was the centenary of the First World War when it broke out recently, and there was that big pool of blood outside. It looked like blood. It looked like a pool of blood outside the Tower of London. It was poppies.
Oh, yes, it was.
And it was pouring out the window.
It was crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah, and this is maybe an example of what we're talking about here, where these creatures, these beings, whatever they are, may regard things like the Great War as a blood sacrifice. For them, that's what it was. It was actually designed. It was the killing and the suffering was intentional. for satanic occult reasons.
Absolutely. And
sorry, we're going off into a tangent.
It's the same as it's the same as when we hear about Hollywood stars and movie stars and the music stars selling their soul to the devil. Now, there's a conspiracy out there, if you look into it, that a lot of the major stars and singers, they all seem to have lost a parent along the way. Did they have to offer a blood sacrifice? Because they say that these reptilians, when you call on them for success or fame in this example, well, you owe not only that personal reptilian that you've summoned or conjured up, but that entire race. Now, just recently, Friday, we had Carolyn Hamlet on the show, and she is an ex-Illuminist. She comes from one of these families, Ben. And when she's seen tonight's topic, she shared with me something that she's posted on her blog. Now, I'll post this in the chat, and I scrolled all the way down because you come to a section that says, what are reptilians and what is their origin? And it reads, I will begin with the simple basics and move into more detailed explanation. I think for many reading this, it will soon make perfect sense as to why reptilians are the way they are and why they are so bloodthirsty. Reptilians are not angels or demons. They just are what they are. They are a dominion power of another realm. Some reptilians exercise control of another realm and operate out of that realm as their home base. Now, just to pause there, think of what we talk about with CERN, piercing the veil. Could it be we're opening a doorway? And it goes on, Ben, just to finally cap this off. They are pirates of a sort. Some have ties to Venus, Orion, Sirius, and the Pleiades. Reptilians have the ability to operate interdimensionally and are able to manifest physically. Reptilians have their own agenda, their own type of plan. However, as I explained earlier, reptilians are very much under the management of Satan's spiritual hierarchy. And long story short, because we're getting Carolyn back on to go into this in depth, they don't see themselves as being inferior to anything. They think they are the superior race throughout all the dimensions, Ben.
Yeah, well, this, of course, is a lot of the aristocratic bloodlines think this. And I actually started watching Carolyn's video, and I didn't quite have time to finish it, but it was very, very interesting because we're dealing with, I mean, when we talk about the devil, I mean, do we literally mean a man with a point with horns on his head, or is it a symbol for some kind of spiritual entity or spiritual element to the universe, which is malevolent and harmful?
I've always looked at it as maybe even some kind of negative vibration. And when it does manifest into matter, possibly it does take the form that we're talking about here. However, with it being a shapeshifter, Ben, you know, if the big fella with the horns ever does turn up on the earth, I imagine he'll probably look as dashing as Jesus is portrayed.
Well, I mean, I remember that in the film The Omen, the actual Antichrist was a very, very sort of like dapper young man, very successful, very popular, with a suit and everything like that.
Absolutely. And, you know, Johnny Whistles, let's bring you in here because right now, popular culture again, one of Fox TV's major shows, Lucifer. And today I was posting images of what is now the new chic, the new trendy, and it's to dress up as a witch. What's happening here, Johnny boy?
I don't know, Kev. I think the world's going absolutely crazy.
But reptilians, Johnny, your thoughts on these things?
Reptilians? Well, I think there's not just reptilians, Kev. I think there's a load of different things on Earth that we will never, ever understand unless we get full disclosure from everything. These things are actually going on, Kev. Whether people believe it or not, they're actually going on behind their backs and shape-shifting. I've watched videos of people where their eyes actually, when it's slowed down, it turns into like a lizard eye or a cat's eye or something like that. That's not by mistake. Do you know what I mean? These things are actually out there, Kevin. I've got a lot of time for people looking into these things because I love watching their videos.
Absolutely. And, you know, if they are interdimensional, Ben, I mean, Joe Joseph says I should be a sci-fi writer, but they could literally be on us. They could be harnessed to us. What I mean is they could be all around us in a different dimension that we are not aware of, yet they're basically vampiring us.
Well, this is an interesting thing because, again, we go into different cultures who have different ideas about this. And one of the most interesting is the idea of the jinn. Now, this is a concept that comes out of the Middle East. The idea that there is a parallel world of what's known as smokeless fire, which has its own intelligent entities that are part of that fire element. And they will come. They have the ability to influence this world. You can call on them, and the jinn, of course, is where you get the word genie from the musical or from the pantomime Aladdin. And this was originally one of the Arabian Nights stories. And if you could talk to anyone from that part of the world or with family roots in that part of the world, and they will tell you about the jinn. The jinn are mentioned in the Quran, and I think in the Muslim faith says an awful lot about the jinn.
And Ben, we could go even to the Hebrew, and we could go to Judaism, because they've got something called Dybbuk. And whether it's Dybbuk or the jinn or the Ooga Boogas, as I call them, and the reptilians, it could well be they are all one and the same, different cultures, different names, shapeshifters.
Well, these entities can, in some cases, I've heard of in Jewish folklore, there's the idea of the golem, which is like an artificial creature which is animated by spirit from another world. But they can actually, I sometimes wonder if some of these shapeshifters, some of these people, these human beings, even people you may pass in the street, are actually like this in the sense that they are possessed. They are possessed in a similar way to the young girl in the film The Exorcist.
Well, let's throw in the black-eyed children, Ben.
Yeah, that's a big subject, and I don't know if it's exactly the same, but I mean it's a possibility that the black-eyed children are another element to this. But there's no doubt about it that things like the film The Exorcist, which is of course very frightening, it's even more frightening when you realise that the people who made that film have really done their homework, and it is based on several true events. The possession of young children, especially, by demonic entities. I mean, it's a bit excessive. I mean, their heads don't spin around
Ben,
things like
on
that.
The same theme again, when I brought up the Dybbuk, I mean, there's a recent film that was out. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But again, based on a true story, and we have the Catholics who come in and exorcise places and things like that. Well, what happens in this case is a rabbi would come in and they contain the Dybbuk within a box. Now, this horror film was about a guy who buys a Dybbuk box, unbeknown to him, at a yard sale. And you can imagine what unfolds from there. But again, there's rabbis putting a lot of weight into something that a lot of people would say we're mad for considering.
I know it does seem a bit crazy. I mean, I've seen films of in the world of Islam. They have exorcists to this very day, who will try and remove people they believe are possessed by the jinn, and they'll put the jinn in a bottle, which is rather like the lamp in the story of Aladdin. And this bottle, I mean, you can actually go to places in the Middle East, in museums and places like that, and the whole cellar will be full of bottles, which are contained, various jinns have been contained in them. Now, you've got to say, is it crazy? Is it just witchcraft? Is it a superstition? But when you bear in mind all these other stories that are coming out and all the other evidence that we've brought to bear, including multiple reports of people who are completely mentally normal and have no clinical problems at all in terms of their mental health.
They don't go on to try and sell books. They just have a story to tell. There's no financial gain for these people, Ben.
No. Well, the lady I talked about, she goes under the name Susan Reed. That's her, but that's not her real name. That's the name that's a pseudonym she chose when she wrote her book about being married to this reptilian shapeshifter. And to this day, she has never revealed her real name. She's not made much. She's made very little money off the sale of her book. She does not want to be famous. And she is completely normal to talk to. If you spoke to her and you didn't know she had this story to tell, you wouldn't think there's anything remarkable about her at all.
Absolutely. And people will say, well, why change your name? Well, look at what we were talking about with David Icke. Can you imagine trying to go and get a job if you were the lady that wrote the reptilian book? Or your children may be going to school. Do you want them subjected to that? A lot of reasons why you would change your name for that. But, reptilians, I think, like Johnny, like you said earlier, man, I think they're just one of many that are out there. And what scares me the most, John, is that I think one of the biggest secrets is a lot of them look just like you and me.
Yeah,
it's frightening,
definitely.
isn't it?
Yeah, I know, because it's like, I've seen many things that have says, Kev, even talking about Satan. It says if you want to see what Satan looks like, just look at yourself because he's just like you.
Yeah, I mean, I can well imagine that an entity that lived outside our universe and wanted to parasite off it in terms of its energy. I mean, there's a guy called Matthew Deleuze who's written an awful lot about this, and what he says is very, very interesting. That there is, in a sense, the universe we have is infected. The universe, on a psychic, spiritual level, is infected by a malevolent entity, or more than one malevolent entity, which is almost like ticks or fleas or leeches that have latched onto it and are sucking out the lifeblood.
Interdimensional parasites.
Yeah.
And these families around the world, Ben, go and take a walk around Buckingham Palace or around Paris. And you'll see gargoyles, dragons, and a whole plethora of reptilian symbology.
Exactly, yes. You'll see they're almost like they're telling us. It's rather like we're going back to Paul again. I mean, the Paul McCartney thing. It's like they have to tell us. This is far, far more serious.
It's part of the magic, Ben.
Yeah, they are putting out these symbols there in front of us, and we see things like dragons. Oh, that's nice. It's a bit of heraldry. It's an old symbol, things like that. Or we see these war memorials that are covered with, flowers that are coloured the colour of blood.
And Ben,
poppies.
This is all to do with will and our free will. Because as Carolyn was telling us the other night, they need us to willingly give that over to them and these interdimensional entities. And by showing us and us refusing to act on the information that is around us in movies, songs, cities, everywhere, then that, in turn, is us giving them our will.
Yeah, it is, and through the media, and this is why the Paul thing is so important, because the Paul thing, it's not that whether Paul is real or not, it's the fact that if he's not real, then this is the power that the authorities have over our minds. And these authorities, if they are really controlled by some kind of parasitic interdimensional bloodsucker, either literally or figuratively, then that means that we, humans, are in big trouble.
Absolutely. And, think of what your profession, the medical kind of world, Ben, what you used to be in. Think of that. What is it called? Is it the Serapov with the two snakes wrapping around it?
The caduceus.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry. And, some people say that signifies DNA. For me, it looks like two snakes wrapped around a spine. And that, of course, is your energy center goes up and down there. It's crazy.
It's the Kundalini, yeah. It's really quite remarkable because again we have encoded information. I mean, of course, this symbol actually goes back at least 2,000 years, the caduceus symbol, and it was only in the 20th century that the DNA was discovered, which of course is exactly that shape, the double helix. But it's almost like somebody or something knows information that the rest of us don't have or haven't discovered yet, or may have just recently discovered.
Ben, this is what cracks me up. We always hear about how we're the most technologically advanced we've ever been. And I think that is so far from the truth. Yeah. If anything, we're repeating where we've been before. But then we can throw in something like Atlantis. And possibly we're getting ready for the reset.
Well, I mean, I don't know, because we're not as technologically advanced as we have been before. But what's interesting is, as we've spoken out before, some technology is held back for political and economic reasons. And again, this is a very psychopathic thing to do, and this brings in the subject of the psychopaths, which of course is far too big to talk about in the short time we got left.
I think we should do that in our next show, Ben.
Yeah, but that the fact is that the suffering and the pain and the death that has been caused by the machinations of the authorities is the kind of thing a parasite would do. Parasites are not symbiotic like some animals are. The very nature of the parasite is it's not concerned about the well-being of its host. It takes from the host and doesn't give. Whereas a symbiotic creature will actually both give and take. It's kind of like a partnership.
You see, this is where I was going to go, Ben, because think of the big whales and sharks that swim along, and there's a whole ecosystem, biology that live around them. And, they require these little fish because they help to clean them from time to time. But half the time, they're totally unaware that they're ever there.
Exactly, but they both serve each other. The fish get the little bits of food that come off the whale or the shark, so the whale's quite happy for these fish to swim around them, because the fish will then clean their skin and things like that, and of course that's a relationship where both sides benefit. But a parasite, only the parasite benefits, and I think that's where we are. If this universe really has a parasitic attachment, then that's very important.
And Ben, we're almost out of time, but
Okay.
let's leave it at parasitic attachment.
I just think, what would the universe be like if we didn't have this parasitic attachment?
Absolutely.
It'd be wonderful, wouldn't it?
If you want to see your local parasitic attachment, go down to your local politician. You'll find them there. But guys, this has been amazing. And the chat room, they're demanding more time. Joe Joseph was trying to hijack us for his show, but we have taken up far too much of this man's time tonight. And I need to thank you, Ben. Give the listeners one quick last shout out where they can find your amazing blog.
Oh, it's www.panwo.blogspot.com, and that's my main site. It's